This episode, gate repair, a deep dive. Well, last week we did a show on fence repair, but we did not talk about gates. This week we thought we would do a deep dive into gate repair. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition is entitled Gate Repair, a Deep Dive. And to help me explain, here's my ever cheerful co-host and old buddy, Johnny. Johnny, what we got going on this week? Anything?
Well, yeah, there's some things I've got with my neighbor. We're moving around these built-in cabinets and built-in desk.
How are you moving a built-in item? Sawzall?
Carefully. and replacing the hardwood floor where there was no hardwood floor, where these things were standing.
Really? Ouch.
Yeah. It was interesting. They put a light in there originally, and where there was not going to be a light, and guess where they put the on-off switch?
Oh, who knows?
Where the bottom outlet was on the floorboard.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So, anyways, that's
field engineering, Johnny.
So all that's going to be these were previous owners that did that, so that's all going to be changed. Anyways, you asked me what's going on. I'm telling you what's going on.
Jeez, I don't know if I'm going to ask that.
You don't want to hear anymore. So, last week we talked about fences, and now let's get into. We're going to talk about gates.
Gates.
Every time I go, it's a rare occurrence when I go to a gate that works right. I guess more than not, So anyways.
That's an interesting observation, because it does seem that way, especially older gates, right? The older the fence is, it seems like the gates are forever falling down. I just want to qualify, one thing straight away. A fence gate is generally a very large moving door, right?
Yep.
And most of the time they're pretty dadgum heavy. Because nothing in fencing is usually very light. Now, the exception would be actually chain link fences. Gates on chain link fences, you rarely have problems with gates on chain link fences. Why? Well, because the gate itself is lighter. It's also generally not as big. Although sometimes you do get more of a gate, or not a gate, but like a 8-foot wide, fence thing that'll swing on a chain link fence, and they sometimes sag, but generally not. And we'll explain some of the reasons why, but the biggest reason is that the gates on a chain link fence are considerably lighter than they are on a wooden fence. And always chain link fences are set in concrete, and I'm going to make a statement. Every gate needs to have the posts set in concrete, period. I came on this job that I was telling you about last week, which was or 2 weeks ago. That was the genesis of the fence show. Was none of his gates were set. None of the posts for the gates were set in concrete. So they just move all over the place, because there's a thing called moment. And we've talked about moment before, but basically it makes a big lever. You take a 4-foot wide gate, you just put a 4-foot lever hanging out there. And when you add 100 pounds to it, guess what? It pulls things over. So be it as it may, let's go through gate repair. We're going to start with diagnosing, right, Johnny? That's the place to start. All right. So how do you diagnose what's wrong with your gate? Well, first thing to do is just do a quick exam. Does the thing latch right? Now, I will say this. Even if it latches right, it doesn't mean it's right, because somebody might have just taken and moved the latch over time to make it actually work. Right?
That's what I've experienced. It's latches. Here's what I've noticed. Okay. Nobody's actually got to the root of the problem.
Correct.
They've kind of band-aided the issue by messing with the hinges and the latch.
Yes. And that is 99.9. And I have done that I did that for this customer. I said, I literally had this conversation with him. I said, to do this properly, we need to redo. He had a little maybe a 4-foot section of fence where the gate was on the side yard, right? And so it ran from one side of the yard to the other with a gate in there. Maybe it was 6 feet. I don't know. It wasn't very long comparatively. I said, to do this really right, we need to rebuild this whole fence on this side. He says, no, I don't want to do it. Just make it better for now. Get me a couple of years. I said, all right, I can do that. And then I jiggered with just what you said. I jiggered I actually reset the post partially and recompacted it. And I didn't put concrete in it like I should have, but because there was no concrete on this post. I'm like, no wonder.
Yeah, that's big issues. Yeah.
Yeah, it was installed improperly from the get-go. From day one, it was not installed properly, but that's a whole separate issue. At this point, I was coming in as a secondary source going to do the fix. So to do it right, I would have actually replaced all the fencing on that side on that short section. And he had 2 gates, one on each side, and none of them were set in concrete. So first thing you're looking at is the posts need to be in concrete. If they're not in concrete, you need to set them in concrete. And the way that you actually do that, if you're doing a repair, in this particular case that I'm talking about, the fence itself was very rotten and it needed replacement, especially that one section. But if your fence is good, but it's just the gate isn't closing right, or it's been jiggered up, and if you see the post is not vertical, if you put a level on it and it's not vertical, and it needs to be vertical on both sides, 2 sides of it, right? So it's vertical and plumb. Basically, you on a square post, you do one side and the other side, and it needs to be vertical or level on both sides. That's makes it completely plumb, meaning straight up and down. But you actually take the gate off, and you can dig out around the post, just like we talked about fixing a regular section of fence posts, and you can reconcrete around it if it needs it. That's the real way to fix that if the fence is in good enough shape to do that. Then you reassemble your gate and put it back on. Gates should have gaps between, probably an 1/8 of an inch gap, maybe a 1/2 an inch, up to a 1/2 an inch of gap between the gate and the posts, because posts swell and move and things like that. So you just need a little bit of space, and plus square doesn't go square against square, blah, 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 things like that. But both posts need to be set in concrete, and they need to be plumb. And if they're not, that's where most of the problem is. So it just doesn't line up. The posts are leaning, or they weren't installed right, or there's all kinds of things that go on. The other thing that you get with a gate, a lot of what happens is that it drags on the ground. Dragging on the ground. Go ahead, Johnny.
No, go ahead. Now I was going to say, yes, I agree with that, because every time I go up to a gate, that is one of the things that just, it's like you're lifting the gate.
You have to lift the gate.
It's just like, oh man.
Again, I'm going to go back to what we talked about earlier. Gates in general, these are usually wooden gates. They're heavy, and the hinges that they use on these gates are not of great quality. Quite honestly, they're just not. So there's 2 issues that happen there. One is there's 3 or 4 issues that actually can happen. The first one is, are the hinges actually still, do they have structural integrity? Do they not have a lot of motion in them? Because the hinge, if you lift up and down and the hinge actually moves in the pins, you need new hinges, right? That's one thing to look at. The other thing is that gates need to be square. So the actual wood structure itself, and metal too, for that matter, it needs to be square. It can't be bent. It can't have sagged on one side. It has to be square. And there's ways to make it square. You can use a wire cross tie to fix that up, but we'll get to that in a minute. Start off with the posts. Posts need to be vertical and plumb. Now you work on it. Dragging on the ground 90% of the time is caused because one post is leaning, so it drags on one side. So that gate needs to be level. And if the gate's not level, if the bubble is off, guess what? It's going to drag on the ground. Because you again, Johnny, why are fences put in?
Well, to either contain something or
keep something out.
Yeah, keep something out. Yeah.
So to have a gate to work properly, to contain something or keep something out, either way, depending on how you look at it, you're going to have a very narrow gap at the bottom. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
You got to have a narrow gap at the bottom. Well, the minute that post starts to lean just a little tiny bit, that gap narrows up.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah. These things are notorious for that.
Yes, they are notorious for that, and they drag on the ground. So that's the first thing. Posts have to be vertical, right? If you're still dragging on the ground, now you look at the actual gate itself. Is the gate actually square? So meaning, is the left side the same as the right side in length?
Top to bottom, the sides aside, the whole bit. Yep.
The whole bit. And if it's not, there's your secondary problem. And as gates, particularly wooden gates, as they age, wood rot occurs, gravity takes its effect, and it pulls down. Now, most gates should have a cross member in it. It should be at a diagonal. That's a structural issue, and it's designed to keep that sagging from happening. It's not a guarantee it's going to keep it from sagging, because it won't, but lots of times it doesn't. Now, the easy fix, if your gate is not square, is to go get, there are kits out there. They are, I can't remember what they're called, but you can buy them. They have a turnbuckle and a piece of wire, and you attach it on that diagonal way, and you turn that turnbuckle, and it literally pulls one side of the gate up, and you can square up the wooden part of the gate.
And that basically is a pretty quick fix for
a gate that's
not a real bad gate issue.
Right.
And I've used those.
Yes. And sometimes they're installed when the gates are new. It's really not a bad idea to put it on even when a gate is new, because then you just make your adjustments as you go, and it keeps that gate square through time.
It's a good point, because it's gonna, there's gonna be swelling, there is gonna be some movement somewhere.
There's always movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always movement. And so, yeah, it's not a bad, and you can X them too. You can do both sides, and you can actually pull them up and make them, really quite taut. And that extends the life of that gate for a really, really, really long time. Once you get everything squared up, now you're into where you just, and if your hinges aren't, how do I want to say it? They don't have slop in them, meaning that they're not moving a little bit. And once everything's tightened up, your gate should be fixed. Now you go and reinstall your latch and put it where it needs to be. Right. And it should work, and just swing it back and forth. And like anything, it needs to be able to move freely. You might have to dig a little dirt out. I've seen plenty of a gate that's on a, what do you want to call it? Like on a hillside, like a path that comes down from a driveway and comes downhill. And what gets down there? Well, everything that gets washed down with the rain, right? So you've got all kinds of leaves and trash, and it ends up being really fine dirt, but you might have to dig it out a little bit. It should swing freely is what it should do, but just be aware that can happen, that things get caught up underneath it, and that's really common, particularly if it's on a hill. And then you really don't have a choice. You can just dig it out. Now, I've seen people take and cut the fence bottom up and make it higher, but then you stop the function of keeping things from getting in or getting out. And if you don't care about that, that's a different story. Then it doesn't matter. You can cut the bottom of the fence off, the bottom of the gate off, I should say.
One of the things you did touch on, let me pause you there, because one of the things you did touch on was the slop in the hinges. Yeah. And I've seen this more often than not, and probably it never really dawned on me until I was working on, I don't know, maybe my third gate. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yep.
What am I doing here? This hinge is a piece of junk.
Yeah. Well,
and that was most of the problem, where, instead of trying to adjust, and folks, how hard it is to try to adjust something in the same screw holes. It doesn't work.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah. So I guess my advice then is to go down, if you're going to do this, is to buy the best hinges that you can afford too. The big ones.
Yes. The big one.
Because
bigger is better.
Bigger. Yes. That's the point. The bigger, the better. Don't undersell. Don't just get some good hinges, some big ones, some beefy ones. You'll be a lot happier. Trust me. I did this, and I was like, wait a minute. That was most of the problem right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
you can get
think about
a lot of sway. A lot.
There's a lot of moment that's going on here. There's a lot of weight on those hinges. And let's be honest, they're sitting out in the weather, and nobody ever oils them either. Maybe guys like us would do it, but other than that, nobody does.
Right.
So they're running dry all the time, from that perspective.
Yeah. And it also depends on how much you use it. I've seen gates that have never been opened. Honestly, they've never been opened, but that's just a whole different, that's a different,
it's a different
thing. That's a different thing. One of the other tips, and it dawned on me on this one is, so trying when you're hanging a gate, how do you hang a gate when it's so heavy? Because lots of times they're really very heavy, like they're almost 100 pounds or more. So the biggest thing is have a jack, and you can have your car jack or any kind of like bottle jack. It doesn't really matter, but if you have a jack, or you can use a shovel, either way, use a lever, slide in on the outside edge of the gate, and you can pry up the edge of the gate to
That's
get it
right.
up and get it level. Car jack is a lot easier, particularly if you're alone, because you have more fine adjustment. You can adjust it better than you can with a shovel. Um, but you wanna be able to lift that thing up, and you're gonna need to, because they're
Yeah,
heavy.
yeah,
9
they're
out of 10.
clumsy too. I
They're
mean, it's
clumsy. Yeah.
yeah, so here what I've done is created two wedges, and
Sure.
I
Yep.
used a crowbar, I think, to get it up, and then I
Yep.
start to put in the wedges. But
Yep.
using
Yep.
use if you can get a jack under there, or I think what I used that one time was that airbag for doors.
If you have airbags for doors, they work as well.
And you can
Yeah.
just sit there
Yep.
and you can step on them
Pump
and
it
they
up.
pump up. And
Yep.
I put a bunch of wood under there until the airbag would take effect and just start to do that, and it lifted
Yep.
the gate up. But you need, but I think, folks, what you have to do, at least in my experience, was you need something that you can do pretty precisely,
Yeah.
not just I'm close, type of thing. I mean, you really
Yeah, it
need
needs
to.
to and what you're looking for is you want a consistent gap on
That's
the
right,
hinge side. So
right.
usually about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch, just depending on the hinges themselves. But you want a quarter inch gap all the way down. That's when you know you've got it right. Is that the gap is the same, and the gap should be the same on the other side. If everything is square and plumb, that's what it'll be. But you definitely need the gap on the hinge side to be the same. Don't let it be off, because the minute you let it be off, you got to remember you're moving it out, say 3 or 4 feet on the other end, and that an eighth of an inch equates to about 2 inches of
Yeah,
down hang. It just
right.
doesn't work,
Right. And then the hinge is going to be, then the gate is going to, just like any door, right?
Drags.
If it's going to be
Yeah,
open by itself, it's going to be closing by itself. It's going to be,
yes.
you get into that mess. But
It essentially is a door. It's hanging a door on steroids,
yeah.
is what it is. Is really what it is. It's hanging a great big door.
Yeah.
And you just need to have some, it needs to be well supported, which is why the posts always need to be in concrete. And sometimes if you have a really big gate, like if you've got say an 8 foot like cattle gate or something that's really, really wide, the first two posts will be in concrete, and they'll actually have a cross piece that comes from the top of the hinge post down to the bottom of the inside post. And that's done, if you think about it, that's done to tie the top to the bottom of the other post, right? Does that make sense? Did
Mm-hmm.
you understand what I said there? And that will lend to that stiffness of that post being super, super stiff, especially if you have a long moment, like say, if you know what a cattle gate is,
Yep.
an 8 foot cattle gate. They're pretty heavy. And by the time you get out to the 8 foot end of it, now you're really heavy, because it's back to that moment that we talk about. It's a lever. You basically make a great big lever. And so and I say this, and that now people will be driving, hopefully you're driving around going, oh, that's why that's that way. I always wondered why that piece, there's that one cross piece between the two first posts. And that's why, because they're hanging a heavy gate out there. And even if your gate isn't that heavy,
It's the length. I mean,
Yeah.
folks, it's weight times arm equals moment. What I mean by that is the easiest way to explain it is you can put a brick in your hand and then put the brick next to your chest. Yeah, you can
Right.
hold the brick for a while. Take it at arm's length and hold the brick out there for a while at arm's length.
Right.
Now
right.
it becomes really heavy. So there's the
Really heavy.
calculation, right? It depends upon the length and the amount of weight, and then you can get the final moment. But anyways, that's what we're talking about. That's why these gates can be, pretty finicky. I mean, that's and a lot of people, you kind of got to understand that's what's going on. And back to the thing about the hinges, that really wears away, especially if by cheap hinges.
Yes.
Because now you're grinding away all the time. If you're using your gate a lot, that thing is wearing out. Next thing you know,
particularly your top hinge.
the top hinge is going down.
Yeah.
It's really getting sloppy. So,
Yep.
very good.
Yep. So that's it on metal gates. Like I said, if it's a metal gate, it's really not generally for whatever. Well, no, I know why. It's because the structure of a metal gate is lighter and stronger, and so like chain link fences, you generally don't have that problem. But the process is exactly the same. So if it's sagged to one side, make sure the post on the hinge side is tight. One good thing about chain link fences is the way that they attach is usually it's just a piece that bolts to the post. It's a squeeze clamp, and then it's a pinion and gudgeon that go in, and which is just a pin, and it goes into the hole. And they're really generally they're really easy to fix. And you can make all kinds of really good adjustments that way. So it's not chain links actually when it comes to gates is a ton easier to fix, much easier than wooden fences. So I think we covered it all, Johnny. Did we cover it all? Yeah, pretty much. That should be able to do that. Should do gates. If you have self-closing hinges and stuff, sometimes you need to add tension to a self-closing hinge. That's usually like on a pool gate or something where it needs to close automatically. And if you go they're spring wound, and so sometimes you have to put an Allen wrench in the top, and you can just add in some pressure, some tension on them, or you have to replace the whole thing. But yeah, not such a big deal. A couple of just PM things again: keep the dirt and debris out from underneath the gate. Make sure the grass is cut underneath it. Do all that thing. Stain your cut ends anytime you cut the wood on it.
Yeah, that's a good point right there, and I think that's something that. From our past show, when folks, and you're catching up with that, is that if you are putting up any of this stuff outside, if you are cutting that stuff, stain the ends or seal the ends.
Yeah,
it absolutely does not hurt, and it'll really help in the long run.
In the long run, yeah, it really, really helps. And then tighten your hinges every once in a while, and don't over tighten too. You got to be careful. Don't strip the wood. If you're doing wood, don't strip the wood out. It's pretty easy to do sometimes, especially as the fences get older, because the wood gets rotten. And if you haven't done your preventative maintenance on it, all of a sudden, next thing you know, you pull it out and then you're done. Then you're going to replace the post. So yeah. Other than that, John, do you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
I think I covered it up pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. And folks, if you have any questions, ping us, will you? I'd love to hear your experience with some of this too. I mean, we covered fences and gates. Seems fairly simple, but it really isn't. There's a lot.
Well, it is and it isn't.
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of things to think about when you're either putting them in or repairing them and maintaining them.
Yeah, putting them in is a whole different, kind of a whole different thing. But then you're in the alignment and lining, and you got to settle straight line, and then you got to dig the post in the right place and all that kind of stuff.
They can hire Larry for that.
No, Larry doesn't do fencing anymore, so
he likes doing that manually.
Yeah. See,
you see some of the bobcats running around out there with the big augers and stuff like that. Larry says, "Nope, no way. I'm out there with a post hole digger."
There's believe it or not, there's time it's kind of funny. We had tractors and we had bobcats.
Miles and miles of fencing. There's Larry.
Well, there were times if you had a small run, it was way faster to do it by hand. It really was. It was a lot faster because it took more time to unload and load.
We're going to put a video out on that, Larry. You can show us how to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hey, too, Brute.
All right, folks.
All right, spaceship's landed, Johnny. Do you look at it? Do you take it apart, or do you
all
fence
right,
it
baby.
in?
We're taking it apart this time.
Taking it apart. All right. If you like this nonsense we do, please like and subscribe to us. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, questions at handymanprosradioshow.com, and we will respond to you. And what else we got, Johnny? I guess that's it. Take us home, baby.
That's it. Hey, folks, thanks a lot for listening, and stay safe. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.